there is one last technique I want to show you about hi-hats that deals with a problem that electronic hi-hats, especially if you do them like I do, by just placing samples in the arranger, kind of tend to have. And that is that if they repeat a lot, they can sound really grating because it's just always exactly the same sound, and something about that sounds kind of unnatural to our ears, I suppose. So if we just listen to this for a few times, you can hear how it just never changes. Let me just loop this here. And there is a way to make this a lot less, I do want to say annoying actually, and that is to add some very subtle kind of variation in the envelopes. And by very subtle, I mean you basically don't hear this, as like if you listen to the track, you don't go, oh, that's what they did, but instead you just don't ever feel like the hi-hats are getting annoying. So what I like to use for this is a transient shaper. Once again, this is a free one. I just prefer it to the Bitwig one. And what I like to do is randomize this a tiny bit. So this has this pump, sustain, and speed parameter. And all of these kind of change the envelope. So if we listen to sustain, this kind of shortens it. Pump kind of turns down the middle bit. So I mostly like to automate speed, sustain, and a little bit of pump by just adding some random modulators to it. And mapping this in a very subtle kind of way. So I don't want this to sound like there's anything happening. I just want it to sound a little bit more random and a slightly bit varied over time. So I'm just gonna turn the sustain down a bit here. I'm gonna random modulate the speed, although very slowly, I think. And then I also want to turn down the pump up, turn up the pump, but only a tiny bit. And I'm gonna leave the attack alone for now. So let's listen and try to keep this as subtle as possible. You don't really hear much of a difference. But if I turn this off, I think you'll really be able to notice something. You can hear, or at least I can kind of hear, or at least I think I can hear, that it just becomes a bit more grating. So I have these subtle randomized transient shapers that really don't change the sound much, but just give it a tiny bit variation on most of my hi-hat tracks. So I'm gonna copy this over to this and this as well. These hi-hats we made ourselves don't really need this because we've already baked in some randomization here. So for now we don't really need to add this. But yeah, you can do this on anything, but I think it's especially effective on hi-hats. So if we listen to this now, it just adds this tiny bit of life, this tiny bit of variation that can help make the overall drum loop feel a bit more natural and a bit more alive and less kind of drum machine-y and incessantly repetitive. So yeah, that's the last thing I wanted to say about hi-hat. Something that can really go a long way. These tiny subtle bits of randomization spread throughout, the same as we did with some aspects of the snare layering, to just add some life to the drum loop.